Last summer, as I was contemplating the future of Shonen Jump, I worried that while Yukinobu Tatsu's Dandadan was brilliant, it might be a little too weird for its upcoming anime to really take off. I've never been so happy to be so wrong. Science Saru's brilliant adaptation hit the ground running and never looked back, accruing copious hype and acclaim as it led the charge into 2024's Anime of the Year debates. 1 year and 24 episodes later, it still stands as a top contender in 2025, even amid arguably fiercer competition. And so, as the second core winds to its explosive finale, I want to explore what exactly so many of us love so much about this anime, and what really sets it apart from the shonen battle crowd. One thing Dandadan shares with a lot of the best Jump manga is fantastic fits. These teens with Tude are constantly dressed to the nines, at least when they're dressed at all. And you can be too with today's sponsor, Fabletics. Fabletics active and casual wear is as light and breathable as it is fabulous, with a wide range of styles for a wide range of body types, so you can always look your best whether you're hanging out, hitting the gym, or fleeing a giant monster crab at 100 kilometers an hour. Anywhere you go, any time of year, Fabletics has you covered. Literally. And for the fashion challenged among you, they even have preset outfit packs to give you a head start on looking good. What's more, if you become a VIP, you can get an entire outfit every month as part of your membership, on top of a discount of up to 50% off every product and a 70 to 80% discount off your first order when you sign up to be a VIP. And if you don't need an entire new outfit this month, you can simply skip the monthly payment and keep enjoying the discount. Click the link in the doobly-doo to get your first fresh and comfy fit today. Every once in a while, a genius mangaka comes out of nowhere to set the industry ablaze. Yukinobu Tatsu is not one of them. After his 2010 debut manga flopped within 8 chapters, he spent the next decade puttering around between magazines, working as an assistant to such a genius, Chainsaw Man's Tatsuki Fujimoto, and submitting pitch after failed pitch for his own stories. But his fortunes took a turn when Chainsaw Man and Spy Family editor Shihei Lin took him under his wing, forced him to read 100 shoujo manga to learn some emotions, and recognizing that Tatsu's vibrant visual imagination is his single greatest strength, encouraged the artist to simply draw something without thinking about it first, instead of bending his vision to fit some preset plot structure. This playful approach finally unlocked Tatsu's true potential, and after a few years of S-class doodling and laid-back brainstorming, plus one particularly inspiring viewing of the Ring Grudge crossover flick Sadako vs. Kayako, Dandadan was born. If Chainsaw Man is a chaotically composed collage of Fujimoto's favorite manga and movie iconography, then Dandadan is a masterfully improvised medley of every greatest hit in any genre or medium that's ever touched Tatsu's heart. A quirky shoujo love story jumps right from the meet cute to the test of courage trope, which bleeds seamlessly into a harmony of classic B-movie body horror notes that in turn build up to a bombastically empowering shonen battle crescendo, culminating in one of the most explosive I just caught feelings moments in rom-com history. And that's just the first chapter. As Dandadan goes on, its heroes go from brooding over romantic rivalries to fighting the fucking Loch Ness monster to befriending a hardworking single father to helping a lovelorn haunted anatomical model overcome society's prejudice to be with his one true soulmate to unearthing an ancient mole man cult that's secretly taken over a small town to crying over the heartbreaking tale of a sad little ghost boy who never got to go out and play, to stopping that sad little ghost boy from genociding the entire planet, to playing high-stakes Dance Dance Revolution against a malevolent Bach bobblehead, to holy is that a kaiju? Oh shit, we're Power Rangers now, boys! And so on and so forth through confession scenes and Jumanji tributes until the current arc of the manga, in which, skip to this timestamp to avoid minor spoilers, starting in 3, 2, One, the gang in the Mole Man cult just teamed up to fight a sharknado. Not fight the sharks coming out of a tornado. They fought the actual tornado with the sharks. And not only does every last step of that insane journey make perfect logical sense within the anime's world, every single transition between different tempos and moods and genres is so smooth it's practically invisible. Like it's all part of the same big, crazy, incredible song. Legendary composer Kensuke Ushio very intentionally evokes that vibe in his score, making heavy use of samples from a vast range of sources, classic and contemporary alike, to create a soundscape that is distinctly, harmoniously, and infectiously Dandadan. The sound design, likewise, plays loud and proud tribute to the classic films and shows that inspired Dandadan's eclectic genre mix, Japanese and otherwise, but mostly tokusatsu, because that's what they got the sound libraries for. Yet, the old school effects and music never feel archaic or out of place. By changing up the context, Dandadan makes all these golden oldies you've heard 100 times before feel fresh and exciting and perfectly at home in this hip new anime that all the youngins are buzzing about. And while it's obviously better if you get all those references, you don't need to at all to appreciate the story, because Dandadan makes every last cliche and trope it samples feel like it was written bespoke for this specific composition. It is the highest, most ascended form of nerd reference storytelling, and that's the least impressive thing about how it's written. If you want to be super reductive, you could describe Dandadan as either a shoujo dramedy about two weirdos falling in love with cool monster fights sprinkled in where the stupid drawn-out misunderstandings should be, or a shonen battle manga about ghosts and aliens with peak shoujo romance stuff where the tedious exposition should be. In reality, it's both of those things in equal measure, plus several dozen other things to a far lesser degree, including a horror story, a super robot series, a goofy gag manga about an obnoxious talking cat, an epic space opera, an epic rock opera, a love live, and whatever the hell this is. Shoujo romance and shonen action are the default modes, though, forming the hybrid story structure on which all the other crazy shit is built, and the synergy it achieves between them is nothing short of masterful. Yukinobu Tatsu is far from the first Shonen Jump writer to create Peak by borrowing from his shoujo sector colleagues. Bleach, Chainsaw Man, and Saint Seiya are all just magical girl stories. Jujutsu Kaisen and Haikyuu are yaoi with extra steps. Yoshihiro Togashi's entire career is built on the same elite shoujo ball knowledge that landed him the baddest bitch to ever write a manga. Akira Toriyama himself has said that shoujo has some of the best stories in the entire medium. I could keep going. There are countless examples, but none strike quite so perfect a balance of shoujo and shonen elements as Dandadan. I don't have to tell you the action in this show is amazing. You've been staring at it this whole time, and one look at any spread from the manga is all you need to know about how good that side of it is. No matter what mode of action Dandadan adopts, be it tense J-horror, giant robot gatai goodness, or good old-fashioned big shonen brawls, Tatsu absolutely nails his depiction, and Science Saru likewise nails their adaptation, using their diverse animation talents to sell affecting mood and atmosphere, a convincing sense of scale, a wildly exaggerated sense of speed, or whatever else any given scene may need to work. It's simultaneously a better Godzilla anime than most Godzilla anime, and more effectively creepy than most horror anime. And I don't know if I've ever seen a better execution of the speedster trope, at least one that doesn't do the whole Quicksilver slow-mo gimmick in any medium, period. If there's anything Dandadan's action lacks, it's stakes inherent to the fights themselves. More often than not, the enemy is just some ghost or alien asshole who showed up out of nowhere to be a dick, or steal one, as the case may be. Instead, the emotional stakes are sourced externally, rooted in the characters resolving their romantic conflicts mid-battle. You know, coming to an understanding that's immediately reflected in them teaming up in some cool way, or putting their trust in each other at a clutch moment, that sort of thing. It's a neat narrative trick, but it only works if we're emotionally invested in the heroes and their relationships, which thankfully we are, because as hard as it goes in the action scenes, Dandadan is surprisingly soft and tender when it needs to be.
助けるって言ったのに生きててよかった
The series' romantic side hinges on Momo's obsession with Ken Takakura, an old-school Japanese actor famous for playing stoic, gentlemanly badasses in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, equivalent to an American Zoomer having a crush on Marlon Brando or Robert De Niro. Unlike her douche of an ex, Okarun doesn't have that vibe at all, not if you just look at him. But the soft-spoken nerd steps up to the plate every time it's asked of him, no matter how scared he may be, and despite his difficulty expressing his feelings, he is always considerate of hers. And most importantly, he sees her as a person and potential friend long before he considers her as a romantic partner. He is in temperament exactly the Ken Takakura she's been looking for, even if he doesn't look the part. And the show is very slick about showing rather than telling us this over the course of their first adventure. The choices he makes when the chips are down and the few glimpses that we get of his inner world when the mask slips create more than enough justification for her to catch the feelings that will drive the rest of the story. Plus, even if she didn't think him nerding out about all his nerd stuff was totally adorable, which she totally does, it's not actually nerd stuff at all. Aliens are real, his interests are valid, and in fact, everyone else is dumb for not being as obsessed with aliens and the occult as he is. Checkmate, bullies. Dandadan also inverts the typical shonen dynamic by having Momo be the squad ace who ends up saving Okarun's ass way more often than he saves hers. I actually think Turbo Granny saves her more times than he does this season. And on paper, you might think that would be emasculating for him as a hero, but it's quite the opposite in practice because he never stops trying. If someone needs help and there's something he can do, or if there's even a chance, Okarun will throw himself in without hesitation. Since he never had anyone in his corner until Momo showed up, it's only natural he'd want to be in everyone else's corner. On the flip side, you'd think someone more like Ira, all sweet and doting, would be a better fit for such a timid geek than a brash, foul-mouthed Gyaru, but Momo's attitude is exactly what allows her to blow past Okarun's walls. She understands that he's an awkward fellow, after all, and can thus give him the push he needs when he's holding himself back socially. Her obligatory shoujo protagonist two-pack of sassy Gyaru friends, likewise, understand that she can be a bit of an awkward gal herself, and they're more than happy to give both of them the push they need to get past that and move toward their obvious endgame. That obviousness might be a shortcoming in a more traditional romantic drama, but it's vital to making Dandadan's odd mix of elements work. The typical trade-off with Tatsu's Toriyama-esque approach to making up shonen battle stuff as you go along is that manga that do that tend to lack a clear sense of direction, with no preset endpoint to build toward. That's why the Dragon Balls were so important to early Dragon Ball. But with Momokarun as its clear endgame goal, Dandadan is able to create a sense of steady momentum just by inching that relationship along between each fight. That said, Tatsu also does a better job than most seat-of-your-pants type mangaka at making the action side of Dandadan feel like he planned it all along by yes-anding his own ideas in fun and unpredictable ways. From innocuous dick jokes to hardworking single fathers named after dick jokes, things any other mangaka would treat as throwaway, Tatsu will reincorporate when you least expect them. And that's especially true when it comes to the characters. Once someone enters play in Dandadan, they stay in play. Enemies, allies, seemingly random background characters, anyone can come back at any moment to play a key role in the current arc or even kick off a new one. In that way, Dandadan can feel more like One Piece than Dragon Ball, in spite of its loose planning. This mesmerizing spinning plate routine where the performer sets piece after piece into motion until there are hundreds in the air at once, and yet somehow he never seems to drop a single one. Nope, not one. Definitely not two. And the anime adaptation presents a chance to further refine the routine, truncating and adjusting the messier parts of the story, inserting bits of bonus chapters to flesh it out and modulate the pacing where needed, and generally just improving on Tatsu's improv. They could even, theoretically, reinsert characters that Tatsu's neglected for a while in the manga into the anime next season, if there were any such characters, which there aren't. It's a fantastic case study in how the modern seasonal approach to shonen adaptations can complement these looser, less planned out manga, and it makes me wonder what Naruto or Dragon Ball might look like given the Ranma remake treatment. There's worse ideas for milking it in a post-Toriyama world, that's all I'm saying, Toei. The villains especially benefit from how the anime frames them, using distinct, nearly monochromatic color palettes to depict the aura of each creature, warm colors for ghosts and goblins, cool ones for aliens, which has actually done a lot to fuel the very credible fan theory that Momo might actually be from outer space in like a sci-fi parable for the legend of Momotaro, which would mean that Okarun was actually right, and the only person who would be his friend was in fact an alien all along. But I digress. The bold colors and sharp high contrast lighting lend each supernatural encounter a palpable, memorable atmosphere, further enhanced by carefully chosen music. Each foe and each fight has its own unique rhythm, even in the manga, through the spacing and pacing of panels, and of course the concept of rhythm itself is baked into the very DNA of Dandadan's quirky psychic power system, so the series takes to animated action with musical accompaniment like a mantis shrimp to water. It's impossible to pick just one favorite fight because they're all fantastic in their own way, though the absolute best moments come when the fighting is over and we get a peek behind the monsters' masks.
何か大切なものをなくした気がする。
お母さん。あれ、違う。
Every yokai was a person, a broken, tortured soul fueled by unquenchable rage at the world that so unfairly killed them. Every one of them, no matter how dangerous they may be, no matter how malevolent and cruel they act, is the product of a profound tragedy, and the most heart-rending moments of Dandadan's first and second season elevate those tragedies into beautifully poignant short films. And twisted as the yokai may be, they are still human, capable of growing and changing. Evil Eye, when you get down to it, is really just an excitable little kid with the power to wipe out humanity. He's got some pretty understandable beef with our species motivating him to do that, which is a lot to get over, but fundamentally, I'm pretty sure if you sat him down with an Xbox for a couple hours, then told him that wiping out humanity would mean no more new video games, he'd turn around on it right quick. We can see Turbo Granny turning around on the turd nuggets in real time, at first only helping them because it indirectly helps her get her powers back. But when she sees how they treat acrobatic Silky, that moves her a little. And it moves her a whole lot when Okarun risks his life to save her from that big wormhole. After that, she starts actively helping him master her powers without him even having to ask her. She's the one who approaches him, and she even lets Ira tag along, possibly in hopes that the music room ghosts will kill her, because I'm pretty sure she's still a little annoyed by Ira at that point, but more likely she was actually trying to help. Granny never loses the attitude, which is great because she's hilarious, but with each passing episode, the quips and barbs get a little less cutting, a little more affectionate, especially with her spa buddy, Seiko. Before you know it, she's one of the family, and that's kinda how it goes with everyone.
幽霊がいる証明にはなりませんよね。
だったら宇宙人に UFO 乗せてもらったことあんのかよ。
議論が飛躍しすぎですよ。バカなんですか?
When we first meet them, every member of the main cast, including the romantic leads, seem like jerks. Momo goes way too far in taking out her breakup on Okarun when they first start talking, and when she tries to offer him an olive branch by humoring his interest in the occult, he immediately and very smugly throws it back in her face, as any serious parascience enthusiast would when confronted with something as ridiculous as ghosts. That initial friction is necessary to ignite the spark between them, but it also works as a clever little psychological shortcut to get us in the audience to like them. We start out asking, hey, who the hell are these assholes? And in answering that question, we come to understand them and think, no, I guess they're not such assholes after all. That process of getting to know them endears us to them much more than if they just seemed like nice people from the jump. And Dandadan is very clever in how it goes about this, as the traits that seem at first to be the character's greatest flaws end up being each one's best feature. Momo's no bullshit attitude, which initially led her to be way too mean to Okarun, only gets more charming the more you're exposed to it. And his jackass stubborn zeal for his interests is both cute in its own right, at least to girls who like nerds, which there are way more of than you'd probably think, and it's reflective of the strong conviction that leads him to step up as a hero time and again. Ira's terminal main character syndrome is extremely obnoxious when we're first exposed to it, and it stays obnoxious, but it comes part and parcel with a strong sense of responsibility for her and all the background characters around her. She doesn't just let problems fester. If she can do something about it, she does something, even if she doesn't actually understand the problem and hasn't bothered checking to make sure it's a good idea first. And when she inevitably makes a mistake because of that, she owns up to it in front of everyone at the cost of her own reputation. Kinta is a hopeless otaku chunibyo trapped in a fantasy world of mechs and monsters as his aging peers all leave him behind, but it is precisely his refusal to subdue his inner child's imagination that allows him to so swiftly master the nanoskin and save the day with Dai Kinta Bodhisattva Zeta. At the same time, though, his self-centeredness still shines through in how he pilots, with complete disregard for the motion sickness thresholds of everyone else in the mech, because the twist with Kinta is that he is actually about as much of a jerk as he seems to be at first, or at least profoundly immature and the living embodiment of scaring the hoes. He thinks he's just like Okarun and that Okarun can teach him the secret to an otaku getting laid, but the secret is that Okarun doesn't want to get laid. He just wants to make friends. Also, Okarun's not really into anime or video games or any of that otaku stuff. His nerd interests are in very serious scientific topics like cryptids and space aliens. Out of the rest of the crew, Gigi actually watches far and away the most anime, except for maybe Ira, but she'd never admit how much Precure she binges. Okarun knows a little ball too, in that he's seen Slam Dunk at least, but that's super normie shit in Japan. Gigi's out here singing the 80s Ranma theme song. He knows his stuff, and he thinks Kinta's really cool and wants to be friends with him, which sucks, because Kinta is too obsessed with getting laid and too intimidated by handsome guys to ever give him a chance. It's straight up tragic. if and when Kinta does finally start being nice to Gigi, that's probably when his character will actually start turning around for real. But right now, he fills a very interesting role in the cast by being entertainingly obnoxious plus too useful to get rid of, which makes for a nice shakeup from Dandadan's typical character introduction pattern. But speaking of Gigi, he also inverts Dandadan's formula in an interesting way. Aside from being kind of a dick to Momo when they were 8 years old, everything that leads the audience and Okarun to initially mistrust him is just a matter of circumstance. No one likes when a new romantic rival pops up, after all. And he quickly proves to be a genuine and kind person with a sincere interest in basically everyone he meets. Unlike most every other squad member, it's very difficult not to like him. But the evil eye turns that bottomless well of empathy against him to steal his body, and for a good while, Gigi's refusal to give up on the sad little ghost boy makes him the single biggest threat in the entire series. But with Okarun's help, he is able to stick to those guns and work toward neutralizing the threat, both by controlling his own ki and by winning the genocidal demon over with the power of friendship. Two things Gigi's equally good at because he's more or less a classic Big 3 era shonen battle protag with an unflappably positive attitude and a preternaturally prodigious knack for the magic kung fu power system. That sets him in contrast to Okarun, who serves more as the sort of reluctant, hard-working hero you'd find in more modern shonen, while pulling double duty as the love interest in the quirky shoujo rom-com with supernatural elements that Momo is the star of. He's also the brooding masked anti-hero who always swoops in to save Iroh when she needs him most in the magical girl anime in her head, and the faithful sidekick character in the mecha anime in Kinta's head. Dandadan takes the idea that everyone is the main character of their own story very literally, which is quite useful in modulating the series' many different modes of action. Focusing on any one hero naturally leads to them being the center of the action as well, so if Tatsu's doing a good job of mixing it up between battles, chases, mech fights, and so on, and mixing up which characters get involved in each type of action, that probably means he's also balancing out character interactions and development. This epidemic of main character syndrome is also vital to how authentic Dandadan feels in its portrayal of teenagers. We're all kind of narcissists at that age, after all, caught up in our own all-consuming shit and barely cognizant of anyone else's shit aside from our close friends. Also, most of us are very horny on account of the raging hormones and all, and Dandadan isn't shy about exploring that side of growing up either. Fairly or not, it's arguably what the show is known best for, at least among people who haven't watched it. A situation that's been severely exacerbated by certain fans intentionally presenting the less work-safe moments of the show to the internet out of context. And in Dandadan's case, I think that context really does matter, because there are multiple scenes, including in episode 1, where Momo is almost violated on screen, which can be very off-putting even with the proper narrative setup, never mind without it, or with some weirdo leaving a caption about how hot he thinks the clip is right over it. That is framing Dandadan in the worst possible light, as cheap, exploitative grindhouse fare, when the reality is anything but. Dandadan depicts sexual violence because it has something to say about it and the people who perpetrate it. Serpoians are portrayed as essentially sweaty nice guys from outer space going, "I showed you my probe, now you show me your banana organ." It's vicious, targeted satire of a specific kind of guy. The same kind of douche as Momo's ex, who dumps her for not putting out on his schedule. Dandadan is very clearly pointing to the similarities in their behavior, the transactional way they view relationships, and saying, this is predatory and gross, then holding up Okarun as a counterexample of what a real gentleman looks like. And it does it without damseling or objectifying Momo. She saves herself with only a little bit of his help and a bit more from Turbo Granny. Okarun himself also ends up being assaulted by the Serpoians later, so it's not just women being victimized, even if that is more common. And crucially, the show also avoids objectifying its victims across the board. Turbo Granny is also heavily implied to be an avenging spirit with a specific grudge against abusers and predators. She has a soft spot for the spirits of victimized girls, like the bound spirit in the tunnel, and in the few fight scenes she gets involved in, she goes the hardest when she's fighting Serpos or the Keto clan. I know there are some people out there who think the second scene with the Ketos in the hot spring is too much, like, why do we have to go through this again? But they represent a very different kind of predator from the Serpoians. Old money, entrenched in the community with cops looking the other way so they can get away with whatever they want. And I think that commentary is also very valuable and adds to the story's overarching theme of young people fighting back against adults who want to use and exploit them. That doesn't mean that viewers are wrong to feel uncomfortable about this stuff. Dandadan walks a very fine line between portraying Momo's vulnerability in a sympathetic way and just showing her naked, and there is a case to be made that it crosses that line at points, but it is a horror story covering a horrific subject, so discomfort is to be expected, and for what my opinion as a dude is worth, I think it's handled about as well as it can be, as are all the other heavy subjects the series tackles, from acrobatic Silky and Evil Eye's backstories to even darker topics to come in future seasons. As uproariously crass as Dandadan can be, it is sensitive and tactful when it counts. It is mostly uproariously crass, though, and a ton of fun because of it, using humor and levity to make those darker themes easier to swallow and to give us a reprieve when we've made it through the ringer in a particular arc. Another way Dandadan reminds me of One Piece is that every arc ends with a big party and a ton of food, a chance for us and the characters to take a breather and reset before the next big crazy thing happens. Though when that next big thing can happen anywhere at any time, including in the middle of a meal, you can never relax completely. Dandadan delights precisely because it can keep us on our toes like that. Because even as it retreads familiar ground and plays with old tropes, you can never be sure where it's gonna go next. What you can be sure of is you'll be in good company getting there, have a good laugh when all's said and done, and probably see something you've never seen before along the way. And whatever you see, you know Tatsu's gonna draw the shit out of it, then Science Saru's gonna animate the out of it, then Hollywood's gonna shit all over it with a terrible TV show. But until then, the fandom will be riding high on one of the best manga and best anime of the past decade. I'm Geoff Thew, paranormal detective extraordinaire, and if anyone's seen a golden ball or two lying around, just let me know. Asking for a friend.